I'm not a realtor out in the business actually selling. I mean, you are an expert in that area. What I can provide is some background on the economy, some policy impact that could have either positive or negative impact to the real estate industry. But right now, as Jim mentioned, we went through this crazy times. Crazy time means the unprecedented housing market bubble. U.S. never encountered such a situation before. And you had a situation where anyone who had a heartbeat could get a mortgage. And too many buyers coming in, prices being way pushed up, way out of any normal fundamental situation, yet the lenders continue to provide loans. Then we had a very harsh crash landing. As a result, many people were flipped upside down. People being forced into underwater situation. People who want to get out are either needing a short sales approval, which is a huge headache in trying to get that approved. Or unfortunately, one accident, whether a large hospital bill or job loss, and one goes into a foreclosure because there is no equity in the home they purchase. Unprecedented ups and downs. But the market appears now to be stabilizing. And I would say any recovery would be welcome, but any recovery also is likely to be a slow process. First, the fundamentals of the economy is beginning to help the industry. We have now a job-creating economy. Last year, 1 million job creation. So far this year, if the pace can continue, January, February, March, pace can be continued for the remainder of the year, we are looking at 2 million job creation. So 1 million job creation last year, 2 million. So this is a very positive direction. Furthermore, the housing affordability condition has greatly improved. So people who have been priced out or people who are very conservative in their finances. So they said, well, I want to enter the market and I can't get a loan during the bubble years, but somehow things do not feel right because I'm overstretching my budget. So some of the very conservative potential home buyers decided to say, I will miss out on the housing market bubble and stay on the sidelines. Well, these people who have been sitting on the sidelines now recognize great value proposition and now are looking into entering the market. But there are obstacles. So the economy is improving, affordability is great, but there are obstacles. And the obstacles is underwriting standard pendulum has completely swung the other way, from very lax to now overly stringent. The Fannie and Freddie backed mortgage credit scores today is on average 760. 760. Historical average would be 720. Now we're not talking about the bubble year. You exclude the bubble years as being aberration, artificial. So you look back, say year 2000 and prior, what is the average credit score? An average credit score of Fannie and Freddie backed mortgage would have been 720, yet today it is 760. FHA mortgages, the fallback. People who cannot get the conforming mortgage, they go to FHA. Or people want to go into FHA because of the lower down payment requirement. And FHA credit score, now this figure I don't know precisely, but it also has greatly increased. I think it used to be something about 660, today it is closer to 700. So if one looks at the underwriting standard for the government-backed mortgage, which is essentially the 90 to 95% of overall mortgage underwriting, credit score has greatly risen. As a result, it is holding back any buyers who want to enter the market. I should say many of the buyers who want to enter the market. And in our analysis, one is looking at possibly 15 to 20% of buyers who could enter but being denied the loan, and hence they are not entering the market. Only good news on that area is that perhaps with the banks now was sufficiently capitalized, meaning that a couple of years ago, they were looking at death straight ahead. All this financial crisis, Lehman Brothers collapse, they were looking at that. Now, they have rebuilt their cash reserves, their profits are rising strongly, and they have plenty of cash. Yet they are not lending. But perhaps the lenders understand that, well, what business are we in? We are in the business of lending. So given that they have plenty of cash reserve, perhaps they will begin to open up some channels. We are beginning to see some trickle in the non-government-backed mortgages, things like jumbo mortgages, commercial real estate, and I think this is an indicator that the banks, given the huge cash reserves, are beginning to possibly look to lending. And if the underwriting standard, which has been overly stringent the past 2 years, becomes more normal, then immediately I think one could see a 15 to 20% additional buyers coming into the market. But there are other obstacles. Now that obstacle over the stringent, perhaps it will correct on its own, but the other obstacle is coming from Washington. In light of the big financial crisis and also Fannie and Freddie taking up huge amount of taxpayer dollars, I will discuss a little more on the Fannie and Freddie situation. But because of that, they're trying to make a new mortgage market backing. And they are coming up with something called a QRM, Qualified Residential Mortgage, which in essence means that, at least according to some people who read the regulation, I mean, it's not written down yet. They're in the process of writing it down, trying to get it approved through Congress. But the bottom line is that the down payment requirement could be as high as 20% in order to get a mortgage. And when we look at the analysis, I mean, that will hold back just huge, large chunk of the middle class families from buying a home. It would take 10 to 15 years to accumulate savings to come up with a 20% down payment. I think is an overreaction to the housing market boom and bust. So that is being discussed in Washington. The other thing that is being discussed in Washington is the mortgage interest deduction. We had this unprecedented housing market boom and bust, but also we went through this quite a sharp recession. One cannot call it a depression, but nothing compares to the 1930s 25% unemployment rate. But we went through a very harsh recession, and as a result, government provided stimulus. Now, homebuyer tax credit was a very, very small chunk. I mean, in terms of the dollar figure, $30 billion, that's a very small chunk out of a over $3 trillion budget. But the broader stimulus, $700 billion spending here, $800 billion spending there, and before you know it, we have a record high budget deficit. Given the record high budget deficit, they're saying, well, how do we raise taxes? Maybe we can remove or limit mortgage interest deduction, and that's how we raise taxes. So the mortgage interest deduction, which has been in existence for 100 years, over 13 presidents, which never ever had an issue on the budget deficit, suddenly becomes an issue to say to solve budget deficit, maybe mortgage interest deduction should be on the table and need to be discussed. For any home buyers who are thinking of buying a home, whether rightly or mistakenly believe that mortgage interest deduction will be chopped off, they will reconsider their decision. So that is another thing that is being discussed in Washington. So it looks like the economy is improving, affordability condition is great, buyers are steadily appearing into the marketplace, but there are still obstacles to overcome.